Those are both critical wounds, and that's 4 wounds.
No, that's it.
Hello everyone, welcome to this Age of Alchemy battle report, where today we are going to be playing a Hold the Centre scenario, and after their, spoilers, rather dismal performance last week, we are going to give the Hunters, or the Alchemist Hunters, another chance. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the camera and we're going to show you the 2 different groups that we're going to be playing today. Then we're going to roll for the concoctions and doctrines for the 2 different groups, and then we are going to deploy them and we will start playing the game. For the Alchemist Hunters, we have a Hunter with Great Weapon, an Apprentice with Basic Weapon, an Assassin with Pair of Basic Weapons, an Ex-Soldier with Pair of Basic Weapons, an Ex-Soldier with Great Weapon, and a Noble with a Pair of Basic Weapons. There's another sword hiding in there. For the Council of the Cold Knight, we have an Alchemist with Basic Weapon, we have an Apprentice with Basic Weapon, we have 2 Ex-Soldiers, one of which has a pair of basic weapons and one has a basic weapon and shield. That is a Noble with a pair of basic weapons. And then we have a local hero with a basic weapon and bow. For the Alchemist Hunters, we're actually going to roll for their doctrines this time, unlike just giving them one of each last time. So let's see what we get. Ooh, went a bit all over the place there. Almost ends up with one of each. So we have one of the Word of Stone, one of the Tome of Speed, one of the Book of Blessing, 1 Sage's Advice, and 2 of the Medical Teachings. So my opponent for the Council of the Cold Knight is going to roll their concoctions. Let's see what they get. Okay, so in this case they have rolled a Frost Trap, they have rolled 2 Solidifies, and they've rolled 3 Numbing Icicles. As we can see, that is both players deployed, with my opponent going for quite a central straight line down this side, whereas myself, I have spread myself out a little bit over on each side with the Noble down one end, sort of Ex-Soldier Apprentice, Ex-Soldier Hunter, and then Assassin on this end. So with that, what we're going to do is go into turn 1 and the initiative phase. Turn 1 initiative phase, my opponent's going to roll and get a 3. I'll get a 6, so I'll be going first and they'll go second with a reaction token. In my case, I was just about to move my Apprentice over here, but my opponent's local hero is going to take a snapshot at me before I move. It is long range and soft cover from the hedges and boxes in the way, so we're going to roll and see what they get. No, and they don't get to re-roll because they're a local hero. As we can see, that is the end of turn 1's movement phase, and my opponent and I have gone for a relatively sort of straightforward push up the middle. I've kind of kept my sort of line abreast as it was, whereas my opponent has sort of focused a little bit onto this side over here. So what we're going to do is go into the shooting phase. There probably won't be much shooting, to be honest. It will be a bit of concoctions, doctrines, and maybe 1 shot from that local hero, but that will be it. So for my doctrines, which is the only bit of shooting I have in this list, I'm going to use a Tome of Speed from my Hunter onto my Ex-Soldier next to him, which does go off, so he's going to now make a 6-inch move. And with that, my Ex-Soldier has ended up there behind that building. Next, we move on to the shooting phase for my opponent. So the local hero is going to take a shot at my Ex-Soldier, looking at a 6 because of the reaction and the long range and the cover. No, and they don't get any rerolls. So with that, my opponent is not going to use any concoctions, which will be the end of the shooting phase. Also, there are no models actually in combat range, we've checked. So with that, we're going to call an end to turn 1 and then head on into turn 2. Initiative for turn 2. Okay, roll the same. And again.
Hey.
Okay, so my opponent's going first and I'm going second with 2 reaction tokens. So we're now at the end of turn 2's movement phase. As we can see, we sort of clashed a little bit in the middle. So what we're going to do is move on to the shooting phase and see how we go from there. So my opponent was about to shoot with their local hero with their bow into my Ex-Soldier. I'm going to react and I'm going to use my 3-inch move to go there so that they would, end up shooting through their own model. So they're still going to take the shot. Let's see what they roll. We'll see who hits what. Oh, don't even hit anything. I think that's even third one in a row for that model. My opponent is going to use the number 2 Frost Trap, which they're going to throw from the Alchemist to this point here, which is within 12 inches. Let's see what they get. It does go off, so what we're going to do is just quickly replace that, and then we'll show you that on camera. And now we can see the Frost Trap has been placed. So for my one bit of shooting, which is purely just doctrines, Book of Blessing from this model here onto this model. See if it goes off on a 2+. It does, so I'll keep that dice with them. That means that for the rest of this turn, the next turn, whenever they suffer a wound on a 4+, they ignore it. So my opponent has decided for the first charge in the combat phase, it's going to be that ex-soldier is going to run around and attack from behind like that. So my opponent has one attack hitting on a 3, which hits. Rolling to wound, they're damage 4, but I'm resistance 4. They do. On a 4+, I can ignore this due to my Book of Blessings, which I also do, so I take no wounds. Then I attack back with my 2 basic weapons, both hitting on 3s. So we get 1 hit there, and then we're looking at 1 damage 4, resistance 4. So I get a wound, my opponent has a shield, so it can ignore on a 5 or 6, which they also do. So in this case, it's me running away, which I do, and I'm going to go 2 inches that way. And my opponent's then going to roll a 5, so we'll let them decide and we'll come back. So my opponent, with that full 5 inches, or most of it, is going to move around behind those boxes. Next, my opponent is going to charge the local hero, who's going to jump over and run in like so. They can just make it there because they have that extra inch of movement with their special rule. They have 1 attack hitting on a 3, which does, wounding on a 4, 5 and 6, because it's 4 against 4. It doesn't. 2 attacks for me, both of which hit. Damage 4, resistance 4. Both of which wound. My opponent will now try and back away on a 3+, which they do, so they're going to move 2 inches back. And then I'm going to roll a 5, but I'm actually going to use that to just go there, like that. So my opponent's next charge is the ex-soldier there, who's going to jump over and charge like that. No, actually that's not the ex-soldier, that's the noble. So it's noble against noble. 2 attacks from them, hitting on a 3. Both hit, rolling to wound. Ooh, they get a critical. So I'm going to attack back with my 2 attacks, both of which hit. Neither of which wound. So I'm going to try and back away on a 3+, which I don't. So my opponent gets to attack again. Both of which hit. Neither of which wound, and I do back away, so I'm just going to go the other side of my wound counter. My opponent's going to roll 3 inches and see where they go. Okay, and they're going to go around the corner like that. Next, my opponent's Apprentice is going to do a blind charge down into my Apprentice, so looking at a 3 or more, which they don't get, but knowing my luck, I'll probably try and do the same back the other way. So my opponent was about to charge their ex-soldier into my Hunter. However, I am going to use my reaction token, and I'm going to move. It'll be about sort of 2.5 inches by the time I move through the Frost Trap, but I move to there. However, my opponent does still need to roll to wound, which is on a 5+. No wound caused. For my first charge in the combat phase, I am going to run my ex-soldier around like this into my opponent. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 3, which does. It's damage 6 against their resistance 4, so I'm looking at +2 to whatever I roll. That's an 8, however, that is an ex-soldier, so my opponent now gets to roll 3 dice, because it would be critical wound, and if they get a single 6, they're okay. If they don't, then that's them gone, unfortunately. Oh, and they don't, so the ex-soldier is cut down. And I'm going to roll a d6. 3, I'm going to go 3 inches. I'm going to go back that way. 2. As for my next charge, ex-soldier of mine is going to run along here and into this model here. So I have 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, 1 hit. Unfortunately, no wounds. My opponent gets 1 attack back, hitting on a 3, which does, roll into wound. which doesn't, but on a 3+ they'll back away from combat. No, okay. 2 hits from me. Okay, 2 wounds from me, and that is my opponent removed because they don't have any armour or any way of stopping that. And while I'm there, 5 inches, I'm going to move into this back corner like that. So next I'm going to charge my noble into my opponent's noble, but I'm going to charge them round there. So if I win, I can back away this way. So we're looking at 2 attacks, hitting on 3s, 1 hit. Oh, it is a wound, so that's 1 wound on my opponent, but they get to attack back with theirs, hitting on 3s, so both hit, rolling to wound, and they get 1 wound, which is enough. So they're now going to get to roll d6 and see where they go. 5. And they're just going to move around to the hedge and not go over it. No, and go over the hedge. And there they are. Next, my apprentice, or actually lastly my apprentice, is going to try and jump up and charge my opponent's one. It is a blind charge, which I get. So it's just straight up like that and straight into base combat because of the height of the building. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 3. Nope, my opponent has 1 attack hitting on a 3. Yes, rolling to wound. They get a wound on me. Do I back away? No, so they get another attack, which hits, which doesn't wound, and I back away. So I'm going to go back to here and put a wound near me. My opponent is going to go 5 inches, although I guess they're probably going to stay there. Yeah, they're going to stay there instead. So with that, we come to the end of turn 2, and that's all the combat's done. So what we're going to do is go into turn 3, where my opponent actually has to start rolling their determination. So my opponent is now going to roll for their determination. They have 2 models out, and they've passed. That's absolutely fine. Turn 3 initiative, my opponent's going to roll a 3. I roll a 2, so they'll be going first, and I'll go second with a reaction token. So just before I move my assassin, my opponent is going to roll either way because I'll potentially take damage on a 5+, which I do, so I'll mark him up with a wound, but he does go 1 inch, which would be 2 inches to get out of that. And then 4, yeah, it's pop him there at the edge of the building. With that, we come to the end of turn 3's movement phase. As you can see, it's kind of become a bit of a gang fight over there just to sort of see who can pull off various different kills at the end of this turn. But what we're going to do is go into the shooting phase where we have concoctions and doctrines to go off and see how it goes from there. So my opponents decided to use their solidify, which is why they ganged up on this ex-soldier here in the middle. It's going to come from the alchemists themselves, and it goes off on a 3+, which it does. So this model here is both shielded and solidified. So I'm going to try 1 doctrine for myself, which is Word of Stone from my apprentice. See if it goes off. It doesn't, so unfortunately that was planned to go off onto this model here, but rolling that 1 means it doesn't. It would have given them +1 resistance for the rest of this turn. So my opponent's going to charge in their noble into combat with my ex-soldier. They have 2 attacks hitting on 3s.
Oh!
That was not what they wanted. So I have my retaliation. I might be solidified, but I still get to charge back, or I still get to fight back. Both of which hit. A single wound on my opponent, so on a 3+ they can back away, which they do, so they're going to have to back away. And because I'm solidified, I can't go anywhere anyway. Next, my opponent has worked out that they can actually charge this ex-soldier here all the way round and just into contact like so, so they're straight in front of me. They have 1 attack, hitting on a 3, wounding on a 4, because it's damage 4, resistance 4, which would be 2, so that's 2 criticals, and I have 2 shield saves, or blessing saves, which I make both, so I am not wounded, and then I attack back. I'll just rebuild that later. 1 hit, 1 critical wound on my opponent, who does have a shield, so they can ignore these on 5s and 6s, which they don't ignore either. So do they fall back on a 3+? They do. They're just going to go the other side of that so they keep away from their friends, and I can't go anywhere because I'm still solidified. Lastly, my opponent is going to try with their Alchemist into my ex-soldier. 1 attack hitting on a 3, which does, wounding on a 5 or 6, which doesn't, so I'm going to retaliate. Both of my attacks hit, damage 4 against resistance 3. Those are both critical wounds, and that's 4 wounds.
No, that's it.
Well, after we had a bit of a break to get over that, we're back, and I did win the combat on an obstacle. As it turns out, because I'm solidified, I can't even disengage I can disengage and I can fight in combat, but I can't actually move away from a combat that I've won. In this case, I have to stay still. I can't even jump over the hedge after defeating my opponent's Alchemist in quite a terrible display. So my opponent was about to charge their Apprentice into my Apprentice. I am going to react with my Apprentice and go there. Now the reason for that is that if I win, they have to go back down this way towards my ex-soldier. So I have 1 attack hitting on a 3. No, okay, fair enough. My opponent has 1 attack hitting on a 3. Okay, they're going to be rolling to back away on a 3+, which they do. They will be about 2 inches down here. I'm going to roll and get a 5, and I'm actually just going to go back to where I was, but my opponent is currently about halfway down here. We can't put the model there simply because of the way that they would slide down. Coming around to my turn, I'm actually going to start with my ex-soldier, who this Apprentice is actually here, so I'm going to run up to meet them, but what we're going to do is we'll do that so we know they're fighting over on that bridge. I have 1 attack hitting on a 3. Which it does. It is damage 6 against their resistance 3, so it's +3 to whatever I roll. That is an 8, which is a devastating wound, meaning that we don't even really need to do any further because my opponent's Apprentice is removed. And then I shall roll a 5. I'm going to go and stand there. So we're at the end of the turn now, which means this Solidify and the Blessing both go away. And then what we're going to do is move on to turn 4. Turn 4. Start of turn 4, my opponent needs to roll their determination and their Alchemist is removed, so it'll be 2 dice picking the lowest. So in this case they've got a 1 and a 6. Now the 1 would be a failure because they picked the lowest, however their Noble's still alive with 1 wound, so they get to re-roll that one. It's a 2, which unfortunately means that they are going to lose one of their 2 remaining models, and we've already discussed off camera, if they failed that determination, they were just going to sort of throw in the towel and accept it. So my opponent is going to concede at this point, giving the win to the Hunters. And there you have it. That is us at the end of the battle report, and I can entirely understand why my opponent conceded. Not only did they try and solidify and take out a model with them just doing so much damage back, but it really just did not go their way. So there we are. That is the Hunters hopefully made up for last week after the, again, spoilers, devastating loss that they had then. In terms of getting access to the game that we present today, Age of Alchemy, if you head down to Patreon, which is a link in the description below or at the end of this video, you will find that there are 3 tiers that you can join at. You can join at Scoundrel tier, which is the one that helps keep the channel up and running. It's £2 or I think it's €2.50 in euro or about $3 in US. That allows you access to additional content videos, and like I say, it keeps the channel running. If you want access to the rules, including how to play the Hunters and how to play the game, campaign, solo and all the rest, that is a £4 per month or €5 or $5.50 based on Patreon's current charge rates. That will get you access, like I say, to the rules, the tools, the expansions, everything that you need to play the game, and then you will get monthly a new release with the rules. You will also get access to exclusive videos and special videos that we put out on top of that you would get in the tier below. Finally, there is the local hero tier, which gets you access to special chat rooms and channels where you can discuss and add names in for campaigns and for models. It's where you also get access to earlier release footage and things like that, so you can see some of the stuff we're doing. And it's generally you just get a little bit more extra for that little bit more extra of £6, or I think it's £6, €7 or $7.50 in dollars. So with that said, as we can see, that was quite a good one for the Hunters today. They did rather well in this sort of, we're playing elite models against each other to see how they fared. So all that remains to say is goodbye from myself, goodbye from my opponent behind the camera, and we will see you in the next battle report next week, where we will be heading back to finish the Campaign of Doom. Goodbye, everyone.